what I've seen, at least in the last 5 years, Anmol, is it's very, very promising to see the big names like Bill Gates and the foundations, they're supporting the grants for the new world of startups and all, which is amazing, right? I mean, and one common question, probably this is a pretty common question, but do you see tech going in the right direction? I know you invest a lot in the AI space,
Yeah.
but is it like, I work in the tech space as well, but I'm a tax guy, but I work for a tech firm. But I do struggle sometimes to see the kind of the speed and ambiguity that brings within the speed.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's so much happening, but is it happening for good? Is tech for good?
Tech for good. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting given that, we're probably at the stage where there's most wars going on around the world. So it's an interesting question you propose that. I think, look, innovation thrives as being disruptive. And if it isn't disruptive, it's not innovation. Right. So I think part of that in innovation in its essence needs to be chaotic. Otherwise, it's not going to be fulfilling. But in the sense, are we moving towards tech for good? I think depends on which lens you wear. If I'll be being completely silly if I say tech is only building for good. I think that's definitely not the case. We're seeing with massive weapons, drone systems, AI is now being able to completely control them. You have autonomous drones which don't need manned pilots, and they're completely able to execute their targets without. But that's been humanity since whatever. As soon as there's innovation, the first thought is how do we build it to defend ourselves, to empower ourselves. So I think that aspect is always going to be there. But I think what's very fascinating about AI, I think AI is almost in 4 stages. The initial stage of this AI was general AI, which is you have a ton of data and now you've given it an interface. So now what it's become is you've seen in these cartoons that these massive libraries and someone goes up and picks out the book. That's the stage we're just passing, where there's a ton of data, you fed it, and now you'll just ask, hey, how do we do this? And it's able to get that to you automatically. Now we're moving on to the second stage of AI, which is sort of this reasoning stage of where AI is now able to get book 1 and book 2 and piece something together out of that. We're doing relatively well in that. Now, the third stage of it is autonomous AI, or your agentic AI, right? Which is, again, slithers of it has started, which is it doesn't need my input anymore. It's able to make its own decision. It's rather rational. The next step after that is AI, not almost with conscience, but innovative AI. AI will be able to. The biggest thing, the biggest differentiator with AI and humans so far is AI can't innovate. All these ideas that people put on ChatGPT and say, give me 10 new ways of making money, and it gives you, and you're like, oh, AI is amazing. It is, but those aren't new ways.
Coming from somewhere.
Yeah, there's data is always there, and again, it's doing the 2 books thing. It's taking from here, putting it together. That the real breakthrough will come in when AI doesn't need that. It can think on its own. That's when the scary, but also the really, really hyper part will be, and we will need quantum. The process would be, the processing capacity would need is immense. So as quantum computing goes up, you will see transmission into that. And then last would be AI singularity, which is stage 5, almost stage 4.1, stage 5. I mean, at that point, it's very theoretical, but in the sense that AI will pretty much be all. It would dictate all. It would have its own conscience, and it would be the super brain. There's a really nice book about it, but it goes too much into theoretics, just like sort of quantum mechanics, but not to bore everyone there. But that's the general sort of stage of AI. And me, as being a big AI tech nerd, I think there is massive opportunities, but just like with anything in the world, opportunities comes with parts of danger.
AI cannot be boring, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do want to mention to the audience that we both met in Forum for Good in Diaspora conference in Dubai a few months back maybe.
Yeah.
And there was this conversation about tech for good and Forum for Good and AI for good, all those conversations, and extensive. What blew my mind was Adalat AI, Karya, the kind of stuff they're doing, and it's exceptional the way kind of work that they can bring into the platform and change the world through AI, right? I mean, I'm sure kudos to you guys, like, who are investing in such kind of firms, because it's important to be backed up by the big names and VCs, 100%. So that they can actually make it big, because time is precious, 100%. Even more precious in the AI world, right? I mean, you don't have any time right now, and any change has to be like yesterday already. So But one interesting piece I want to ask. I know we talk about all the success piece, but I want to touch the failure piece as well at some point. Any journey cannot be fairy tale, right? I mean, there will be downfalls, there will be pitfalls, and there will be difficult days. Were there any difficult days for you where you actually invested in somebody and who turned out to be disaster? And how did you deal with it?
Luckily, no disasters so far, but definitely tough days. Yeah, bad ones. I mean, one of those things where founders get money and they get comfortable, which is one of those things you can't predict early on because, I mean, anyone when they're asking for money, you see the glimmer, they're super, super interested. And, you write them a check, and luckily my check was very small at that point. They'd raised about $1 million. My check was only 25 grand out of that. But 2.5 months later, they're like, that desire of wanting to do everything today was like, yeah, we'll get to it in 2 weeks. We'll get to it. And that was the point you go,
this is not the right choice.
This is not the right choice, because that I think comfortability is one of those things which has resulted in a loss for a lot of people, where they've got the big check. I mean, and I don't blame them. People who are used to seeing I mean, most of this generation, especially my generation, right, is in debt, humongous debt. So they're used to seeing minus 50,000, and all of a sudden in the bank account they see 7 figures. It's not easy to handle. Right, and that distracts them. But on a personal end, where a struggle was for me, so whilst I was getting GACS Ventures started and I was doing the pivot and leaving university, my contract in London for my house was running out, and I needed to move to a new place, and I had a choice to make. So at that point, I was onboarding a partner, onboarding a project manager, onboarding my PA, and I also had to move to a new house in London. So, as in London, you have to do the upfront deposit and then 1 month's rent up front. So I didn't have money for both of them. So either my choice was I carry on working, but I'd already handed in my notice. So I go back with the face, and everyone at work had already gone, all right, look at you, Mr. Big Shot. And I go back into that environment, or I take the risk. So I spent about 7.5 weeks sleeping on sofas. So 3 of my friends across London, big shout out to them, that I was like, I'm all in and I'm going to go for it. So I spent, 7 weeks hopping from couch to couch to couch across 3 friends. And I was like, I have to do it. I didn't have the money to have the house plus pay the salaries plus pay for the softwares, and I didn't want to go back to work and be told, oh, I told you so, look at him coming back. And so I think that was a hard period in my life when, every day I would go to sleep, and I mean, I've always had a lot of faith, but it was the back of the mind of like, what am I doing? Right.